Today's episode of DawgNation Daily is brought to you by Pella Window and Door of Georgia, viewed to be the best.
Presented by DawgNation.com. This is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans. Here's your host, Brandon Adams.
Hey, Dog Nation, I'm Brandon Adams, and this is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented by Pella Window and Door of Georgia. You can obviously tell it's nighttime where I am. It's Sunday night. We are just one night away from getting on board Utopia of the Seas tomorrow. So excited about seeing that and excited about welcoming a lot of you in for our Dog Nation cruise coming up in April of 2025. But as we've been telling you, because I won't be a part of the shows for the most part this week, we're going to try to do a couple of minutes here and there, but I won't be a part of the shows for the most part here this week. We've got some great stuff planned while I'm gone. In fact, coming up in just a couple of minutes, you'll see an example of that. Cody Chaffins, Kaylee and Mansell, they're going to man our coverage for SEC Media Days there in Dallas. We think they're going to do obviously a great job, and we think it's going to be a fascinating event. When you think about, for the very first time, kind of sort of stretching outside the Southeast, being there in Dallas, as I talked to Kaylee about on Friday, I'm a little curious to see how Dallas functions as a host city. This is a big town. It's typically speaking, a pretty big sports town. It's not always, though, the first town you think of when you think of the SEC. So how does that work this week? I'm pretty curious to see what the vibe is like around Dallas and the metropolitan area, Fort Worth, and as they kind of welcome the SEC for the very first time. They'll also welcome a few coaches in today. LSU's Brian Kelly's going to be there. There's always the chance of some fireworks with Kelly, I guess. He at times can be a little bit abrasive, it seems like. But he's also got, I would say, a pretty intriguing team to talk about. This is a team that seems like it's pretty well set up at quarterback right now. Garrett Nussmeier, Georgia fans remember him from the 2022 SEC Championship. And LSU's probably got a pretty favorable schedule there as well. So if you want to make a list of teams we perhaps haven't talked enough about, you can make a case that maybe LSU could be one of those, and they'll certainly generate plenty of that chatter here today. You've also got Ole Miss coach Lane Kiffin on hand there as well. Now, Kiffin never joins the ranks of those not being discussed enough. He's always getting plenty of that, and today will be no different. Now, some of that will be sad. Obviously, Kiffin just lost his father. The legendary defensive coach, Monty Kiffin, passed away, so no doubt plenty of time spent at the podium by Lane Kiffin talking about memories of his father, as he probably should do. But there'll also be chances for Kiffin to maybe talk about that game in November against Georgia. If Kiffin does say anything about that, or Kirby Smart at all, that'll obviously be a big headline and something folks will be interested in. This is one of the most important road games for Georgia, and so people will be leaning in a little extra close for Kiffin here today. It's also a situation where Kiffin, who's kind of always sort of thinking about kind of life in the post-Nick Saban world. He and Kirby Smart both worked together at Alabama. You've got to imagine that some of that kind of stuff would come up with Coach Kiffin today there, too. You've got Shane Beamer and Clark Lee on hand, two guys that probably aren't generating nearly as many headlines as LSU and Ole Miss perhaps are, but four pretty interesting coaches to kick it off from day one there, SEC Media Days. You've also got good news for Georgia on the recruiting front. Rashad Johnson, the safety from Florida, committed to Georgia over the weekend. Jeff Sintel had a great story up about that at DawgNation.com, and no doubt we're watching the recruiting stories very closely here as the month of July rolls on. We told you it would be busy when it came to commitment announcements. Thus far, it has definitely been that. Johnson, the latest example of that, and perhaps another example as well of Travaris Robinson kind of finding his home here at Georgia. A guy that has certainly plenty of ties to the SEC, but a new face for Georgia fans. It seems like T-Rob's kind of getting settled in here, as Dante Williams did the other day when it came to the Shamari Earls flip from South Carolina. Georgia's starting to figure some things out when it comes to defensive back recruiting for this 2025 class there as well. We'll also give a shout-out to Charlie Condon. Condon selected number 3 overall in the Major League Baseball draft on his way to the Colorado Rockies. We're certainly very proud of him when it comes to all of that. And before we get ready to go say hello to Kaylee Mansell and Cody Chaffins there in Dallas for SEC Media Days, let's give you a shout out to our friends at Pella Window and Door of Georgia. I'm outside right now, but if you're inside, when you look out the windows, you want to see those great windows, those great doors from Pella Window and Door of Georgia. That, of course, is what it's all about. And so we want you to make sure you check them out. You can find them online, pellaofga.com/DawgNation, pellaofga.com/DawgNation. You want your windows to look good on the inside, feel good, increase your curb appeal the same way the doors can there as well. That is what Pella Window and Door of Georgia is all about. take advantage of great savings. Make sure you tell them that BA from DawgNation Daily so they take really good care of it, because I know they will. That's what they've been doing for a very long time. Find them online one more time. It's PellaofGA.com/DawgNation for a lot more on that. And of course, we're so happy to have them bringing DawgNation Daily to us here today. All right, so now this is the pre-recorded portion. This is me standing out here in the parking lot at the hotel before we get ready to get on board Utopia of the Seas. But you want live coverage of SEC Media Days from Dallas with Kaylee and Cody? Of course you do. So let's send it to them in the state of Texas here right now.
Good morning, Dog Nation. I am not Brandon Adams, but this is still DawgNation Daily. In fact, I'm Kaylee Mansell with DawgNation's Cody Chaffins, and we are here live from the Omni Hotel in Dallas, Texas, where SEC Media Days is set to begin. Commissioner Greg Sankey will be the first to take the stand. He'll be going here in a few minutes. But Cody, it feels like a weight has been lifted off our shoulders. We can finally take a deep breath, because I feel like this premier kickoff event is when the season really starts.
Yeah, we are finally here. We have made it to football season. One of the things is all the players are finally, we think, in place, right? Yeah. There's no more transfer portal. We got all the coaches are there. So yes, we are now focused firmly on the 2024 season, getting ready to kick this thing off. And yeah, football season is here. It's been a long wait since, all the bowl games back in January. But yeah, the 2024 season is upon us.
One thing that Brandon brought up last night was the fact that he wanted to find out whether this agenda with Texas and Oklahoma was being pushed coming into event. I mean, it makes sense with the demographic, it being in Dallas, Texas, that it is sort of a welcome to them. But I think one of the first things that you notice when you walk through the doors, it says 16 strong, a big banner. They want everyone to know that Texas and Oklahoma have joined the SEC, and they're making it very evident in this room.
Yeah, as we kind of walked around SEC Media Days earlier today, there's just things that you notice that are different. We're sitting right across from an ESPN station out of Austin, Texas.
Yeah.
Right? That would have never happened. So there are obviously going to be more media members when you add markets of Oklahoma and Texas. But then you also, even just some of the signage, like when I was in school, the SEC was 12 teams, right? And so they have this one sign that has the little flag sticking off each side. And then they kind of felt like they shoehorned in Texas A&M and Missouri. And now they've added even two. So you'll see it in the video in just a moment, this SEC symbol with the flags all around it. And you've got so many. This conference is so big right now. And as you talked about, the 16 strong. And yeah, look at all those flags, because there's so many teams in this conference. And part of that is we've got all of these media members here. We're going to see all these teams here. We got LSU, South Carolina, Ole Miss, Vanderbilt in the house today. Georgia's not going to play a lot of these teams for years now.
Right.
And it was already kind of like that, with Alabama and the SEC West, and some teams, Texas A&M, we still haven't seen out of the SEC West when it was SEC East and West. But it just feels so big. You've got South Carolina and Vanderbilt coming here today. How strange is it to know just Georgia's not going to see those guys, at least for 2 years, because we know the same schedule this year is the same schedule next year. It just feels strange. Some of our neighbors that we just won't see again.
Yeah, in just a minute, we're going to do a breakdown of exactly how it's going to work. But one thing I do want to bring up is that we'll see Brent Venables speak tomorrow, and then Texas will go on Wednesday. I do think it's very interesting the order in which the schools go. I think Brian Kelly is the right guy to open up an event like this, an experienced veteran, and then you have Brent Venables tomorrow. So they have a day to see how everything works, how it's going to be different, get a minute to settle in. But obviously the big buzz in the room is about Texas and Oklahoma walking down Radio Row, walking past SEC Network and their station. Those are the two things that you hear. Texas, Oklahoma coming into the SEC, and we're going to find out what they're all about right here at SEC Media Days.
One of the things I like to hear today was one of the first things I heard walking through. ESPN has much of their sets set up around here. Somebody said, is there any way Kirby Smart doesn't make the SEC or the college football playoff this year? And the analyst goes, no.
Yeah,
so I'm like,
no doubt.
All right. I like that. We're in a good place right now for Georgia Bulldogs. If that's the first thing I'm hearing for the beginning of the season, that's a pretty good sign.
So here's how it's going to work. Each coach will get 30 minutes on the stand in their podium time. I'm curious to see the types of questions that will be directed at each coach, and then the three players will take the stand together. Of course, for Georgia, it being Carson Beck, Michael Williams, and Malachi Starks, and then each of the players will break out, and we'll get an opportunity to speak with them. But just as a preview into tomorrow, what's the one question you're hoping that they're going to ask Kirby Smart?
One question we're going to ask Kirby Smart. I think, how do you bounce back? How angry are you about the way last year ended? One of the things, you talk to some people and they're like, it's just a big press conference. Who really cares? To me, this is one of the most special times of the year to hear from Kirby Smart. And it's actually not the question and answer portion, although I do like that as well. He has to start with a 10-minute opening monologue, right? When do we ever hear Kirby Smart talk when he doesn't have to talk?
Right.
Right? Like, he comes to a press conference, he's going to answer your question, and he's not going to say any more than that. But he comes up there, and I went back and kind of watched some of the old ones just to get ready for this. And one of the things you hear he's going to tell a funny story. That's going to be part of it. He's going to introduce the players he brought with him and tell maybe some things about them that we don't get to know. And then one of the other things Kirby Smart does every year at this event is he kind of lets us in on the mantra of the team. There's always that motto the team has each year. So I want you to listen. I actually went back and pulled some of the things. So one of the things we're going to hear from Kirby Smart tomorrow is what this team is all about in 2024. Take a listen to some of the former mantras of the Georgia Bulldogs.
We don't want complacency. They've done it better than anybody else, and we use that. One of their big mantras is better never rests. We believe that. Those are strong words now when you think about it. Think deep on it. Better never rests. People have asked the question, how does it feel to be hunted? We will not be hunted at the University of Georgia. I can promise you that. The hunting that we do will be done from us going the other direction. Success comes to those who are too busy to be looking for it. Say that again. Success comes to those who are too busy to be looking for it. That's Henry David Thoreau. And for me, that's it. I'm too busy working. I'm too busy trying to do the next thing. I'm too busy trying to take the next step to give our team a competitive advantage to really worry about expectations.
So that's 2023, 2022, 2021, Kirby Smart coming up there. So the question is, what is it going to be tomorrow? What knowledge is he going to drop on all of us? And one of the things we did hear from players during spring practice, Jalen Walker talked about how they were kind of studying Nike, right? And the book Shoe Dog, which is Phil Knight's story. So between spring practice and now, I had to listen. I do books on tape. I can't read, right? so I've been books on tape. So I go through Shoe Dog, and really it's not about – Georgia talked about how they wanted to follow Nike because Nike stayed on top for decades now. The book's really more about Phil Knight kind of starting Nike. But one of the quotes out of it that I got is, somebody may beat me, but they're going to bleed to do it. And so that's one of the Phil Knight quotes. So who knows, that may be the quote we hear tomorrow from, Kirby Smart. It may be something different, but that's one that stuck out to me, and I kind of like that one. Somebody may beat me, but they're going to bleed to do it. So we'll see what Georgia drops. So you've got that part from Kirby Smart, that he's always going to drop kind of the feeling of the team this year. One of the other things, you talked about the question and answer portion, and one of the things that happens, we as Georgia media members, we're in press conferences with Kirby Smart every week, right? And we kind of know what he's going to answer and what he's not.
Right.
And that shapes your questions. So sometimes a Georgia media member will ask a question. They'll say, hey, Kirby, I wanted to ask you about this. And I know you may not talk about it. And they kind of give him an out. And they kind of couch the question. Here, these people don't know Kirby Smart. The guy who covers Arkansas doesn't know Kirby Smart. The guy who's just here from Auburn who's just going to ask his question. And sometimes that gives you some great answers.
Yeah.
Even if Georgia fans who watch every press conference, we consider it a stupid question. He's not going to answer that. What a dumb question. But actually, some of the dumb questions get some of the best answers because Kirby will open up, and he's not as harsh. He's a little more harsh on all the Georgia media members. He knows all of our faces, right? If you ask a dumb question, he'll jump you. Or my mind goes to last year. They kept asking him about the running game, and he's like, short passing game is a running game. What do you mean that's not a – and he will get confrontational. With these people, it's a little nicer. And so you sometimes get stuff out of Kirby Smart at this event that you don't at other events. So I don't think – it's not just another press conference. It's a very special time where you not only get that 10-minute opening monologue where he opens up, he's shared about Andrew and following him playing baseball and, opens up about his family a little bit, tells some funny stories. So he'll do that, and he'll also, open up a little more than he does at a normal Tuesday or Monday press conference.
Well, I don't know how it's going to get much better than quoting Henry David Thoreau. I mean, how do you bounce back from that, Kirby, with the philosophers? But I think you're right. This is a place where I do feel like walls come down in a certain sense. You make a really good point about, we know how Kirby Smart is in that press conference. You know what when you get scared of asking certain questions, but these people don't. And I do feel like that in our minds, Kirby is this almost immortal type person, but here he's just a human. And I'm excited to see what what we get out of him. But I'm also excited to see what Carson Beck does. Carson Beck did not attend SEC Media Days last year. This year he's coming in. We know that he's the starting quarterback, and I think that his podium time is going to mean a lot. A lot of questions are going to get directed to him, and especially regarding his leadership. So I'm curious to see how Carson Beck goes about his time.
And he's handled everything great so far. When we talked to him last year, he's a great speaker, and he's obviously old now, so he's mature and he knows what he wants to say. The other thing about media days, and it's kind of, it's not quite the Super Bowl media day. So I've been to a couple Super Bowl media days, and that's the one that gets a little wild, right? You get the crazy questions and people bringing props, but they're also interested in a lot of off-the-field stuff. Well, all of a sudden, Carson Beck brings a lot of off-the-field stuff, right? Whether it's his relationship, what's going on Instagram, or whether it's him buying a Lamborghini. So he's going to get, because, again, it's not Georgia media members asking these questions. It's everybody else who that's what they know about Carson Beck now, right? They know he's a Heisman favorite. They know he's got this, influencer that he's maybe or maybe not in a relationship with, and they know he went out and bought a Lamborghini. So we asked him some of those questions in the spring as well, but those are some of the questions he's going to ask. So it's not just going to be, he can't just have these canned, the next game's the biggest game. Right. We got to focus on ourselves. He can't have those answers because he's going to get some of these other curveballs thrown at him a little bit too. Yeah, and you're a veteran. You're someone that's been here before. For me, I consider this to be my true first time at SEC Media Days. So just like you guys at home, I'm still trying to get a feel for my surroundings. Being on Radio Row is absolutely phenomenal. I mean, just everybody going hard, all the different places that we see. We've got Auburn next to us, Texas across from us. We just saw Brian Kelly sitting down with a Baton Rouge station. But like Cody said, I haven't been here before, so I'm curious to see the types of questions that are going to be directed towards them, because I imagine even in the ones that you've been here, it's just changed so much specifically with the questions that they ask, because NIL, transfer portal, that brings a different type of answer to the players that are going to speak. It does. And, for a while it was all about the fashion, right? And we'll get some fashion and who's wearing what and the players. I'm going to bring that coverage. So we will have full details tomorrow on, you saw Brian Kelly. Mm-hmm. He was pretty conservative. He was not wearing LSU color. He had a pink tie and a blue suit. What did you think? Did you get to see him? I did get to see him. I thought that if Brian Kelly was walking by me in a Kroger, I wouldn't have been able to tell you who he was. I don't know why. I guess I imagined to be a more broad man, but it was cool because he's the first coach that entered into the building, and immediately everyone rushes up. They want to get a glimpse of Brian Kelly, and so not what I would expect, but hey, I'll give it to him. The outfit was on point. We'll have Kaylee's full fashion. I feel like I need to dress up more. I've got my boots on today. I'm in full Texas spirit. We are in Texas after all. One of the other things I really wanted to get into a little bit was to find out, Kirby now, there's no Nick Saban come to this event, right? He's the guy. He is now the dean of SEC coaches. So you talk about those NIL questions. You talk about the transfer portal questions. You talk about maybe an earlier signing day. All those kind of questions are now Kirby Smart's question to answer, right? Like, he's the one who has something to say about that. So I'm interested to find out, how he approaches that. And we're going to get Jon Stinchcomb's thought on that. Let's bring in our DawgNation insider, Jon Stinchcomb, into DawgNation Daily.
From Athens and across the SEC or wherever the recruiting trail may lead, here's a DawgNation.com insider.
All right, Jon Stinchcomb joins us. Jon is not in Dallas. Wish you were here, Jon. But thank you for joining us as we are at SEC Media Days. And I'll start with kind of the question I just posed. Kirby Smart, with Nick Saban now gone, is the dean of SEC coaches. Do you think he will embrace, having to answer the questions about where college football should be going, or do you think that's something he'll shy away from, and how do you think he'll do with that?
Do you think Kirby shies away from anything, Cody? I think he's got an opinion on just about everything and is the foremost authority for the SEC now. I mean, you're looking for the loudest voice in the room and the one who holds the most weight, and that's Kirby Smart now. Obviously, with Nick Saban gone, we want to find out where does the SEC land on a number of issues that applies to all of the NCAA, and where do you go other than Kirby Smart to find that answer? And I'm grateful that he's the ambassador for the conference. I'm grateful that he's got an opinion and he's willing to share it, but I expect him to be very much Kirby, and that's if it's a question that he finds not to his liking, he's going to bristle a little bit. He's been known to do that in the past. So I expect this to be no different, in that there's so much that has continued to shake out. And, there's plenty of issues that the NCAA is facing, and it affects our conference and it affects his ability to do his job. And I expect him to be able to express and articulate that on a number of different fronts.
Jon, as a 23-year-old woman, one of my many talents is internet stalking and digging. I tried to do some digging on you to see if you attended SEC Media Days when you were a player. I couldn't find it. So if you were here, what was your attitude or perspective going into Media Days? And if you weren't one of the participants, what was the stigma around SEC Media Days in terms of team culture?
Yeah, I was one of the representatives for SEC Media Days, I think along with Boss Bailey that year, and I believe it was David Green. But it's one of those circus environments where you get a lot of really good questions, talking about the season, talking about your opponents, what your hopes are for the year, what needs to be done, who are some of the bigger competitors in your division that you were concerned about, what needs to happen, what doesn't. All those things are great. And then you get some off the wall questions that, as a 19, 20-year-old kid, sometimes it catches you off guard and you're not prepared for. So it's fun to be in those environments. It's certainly a change. I think for kids these days, or the young men that are representing their universities in this type of environment, they're much more prepared for the wide breadth of questions that are thrown their way. But it's a unique atmosphere, and you're trying, I think, for most of the representatives, most of the students, they're trying not to screw it up, right? You don't want to say something that's too inflammatory. I'm sure there's some strategy in who gets chosen to represent their school. So they want to be able to provide good information, but certainly not a bulletin board worthy commentary that puts you in a little more hot water than you'd want to be with your coaches.
As one of those media members, I love when a guy will open up a little bit, but he's kind of walking on hot coals. Jon, did you have the drip going when you came to SEC? Did you walk the runway?
I sure did. Oh yeah, no doubt about it. Y'all don't have footage of that, is that right? So yeah, you should have seen what I wore. It was impressive.
So you talked about who gets invited. And for your year, it was David Green, it was Boss Bailey, it was yourself. So it means something to be one of the three chosen to represent your school. On that note, we expected Carson Beck to be invited, right? We expected kind of Malachi Starks. What does it say that Kirby Smart has tapped Michael Williams to be one of the guys who comes here to speak to the media this year? What does that say about who he is and who Kirby wants him to be on this team?
Yeah, I think Terrence Edwards might have been a representative for us as well. So you got another DawgNation representative, and I'm sure Jake Fromm was. So y'all have tapped a number of us that were able to represent. But for Michael, I'll tell you what, I think he is on the verge of what could be a very special year. I think he is the next in line for that defensive front to really stand up and shine like so many others have in the past. I think that it's not only commentary from Coach Smart and the choice to have him represent the school, but it's hard earned that he is that next piece that should be a vocal leader for this team, and that the SEC will want to hear from him because they're going to hear from him on Saturdays just by his performance.
So even though Brandon Adams is away, he can't really be away. He has to have some control over DawgNation Daily, rightfully so. And one of the things that he has tasked us with is to see the impact of Texas and Oklahoma on this event. How does it change? And, of course, one of the things that you can see right off the bat is the event is in Dallas, which in my mind isn't the Southeast. Jon, what do you make of the event being in Dallas, Texas?
Well, I think that's a great commentary in and of itself. I mean, you're looking at changing landscapes across all of college football, and especially in our conference. I mean, you talk about two powerhouses that there was awareness of, but they certainly weren't in-house. And now with this expansion, there are so many shifting sands and changing faces across all of college football. I'm grateful that we've got two, I think, strong additions to our conference. I'm grateful that we also don't have, the Atlantic Coastal Conference being represented by two Pacific Northwest teams. That, at least we don't have those kinds of issues, both logistical and just overall looking at it going, this makes no sense. I think there is some rationale that can say, well, we've expanded with Texas A&M. We already have a footprint in Texas. There's not that big of a jump, and these are two value-add teams for the overall conference. I think you look back, if you were to zoom out a little bit and take that 30,000-foot view, the SEC has become and continues to write it in stone that they are the conference that dictates all things football-related in college sports. So to be able to add two more teams that only expand that and cement that even more, that the SEC is the leader in all of football. I think it's a good thing. If you're going to just hold on to the rope of college sports as we zoom past what we've always known, you can't just always hold to tradition, and you recognize that things are going to change. And when you have these kinds of changes, you want to be able to do it in a way that builds the brand. And I think the SEC continues to do that.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. If you're going to add, different schools, add them, it just feels right. It doesn't feel like, you're kind of shoehorning UCLA into the Big Ten. Like, it just doesn't fit that way. So I totally agree with you on that point. As I started to go through, what questions do I want to ask personally, some of these guys who are coming to SEC Media Days, especially for Georgia, when it comes to Malachi Starks, he's back in that Georgia secondary now, kind of, all of his friends are gone, right? Tyke Smith goes off to the NFL. You've got Javon Bullard now gone, who was his other guy back there. Kamari Lassiter is gone. So my question for Malachi is, he's been a leader on this team for years now, but I wonder, does he feel like he's going to have to do more now that he has to get everybody lined up, whether it's Jonel Aguero, whoever it is back there with him, maybe some KJ Bolden, one of those freshmen back there with him. Is he going to feel like he has to do more? And is that a threat to him just doing his job? How do you think he will approach, trying to make sure everybody's in the right spot, but also playing an all SEC level himself?
Right. Well, I think we have the right guy in place to do it. Having talked with Malachi in the past, and obviously watched how he plays, how he goes about his business, I think he's been that old soul, that veteran voice since the very first day he arrived. I mean, you watch the way he came into the program, you watch the way he attacks the game, his mental approach, his ability to be in the right position, and the ability to lead. I think he has been that vocal leader, even though he didn't have, junior or senior next to his name. Even as a freshman, the commentary that came from the coaching staff is he's mature, but beyond his years. And now that he doesn't have those familiar faces, I think that is one of the bigger areas, if not the biggest area of question that needs to be answered for this Georgia team, is how do you replace great players, which, that's the era we're in. And during this Kirby Smart era and high level of national championship play that Georgia puts out there, the product they put out on the field, you're going to have to replace highly talented players. That's what we want. We want to be able to put guys in the first round of the draft, and you come back the next year and go, man, we've got to be able to find the next greatest. And what Georgia's been able to do is recruit at such a high level that there isn't that drop off that you'd normally see when you lose the talent that Georgia has had to replace over the last, let's call it 4 years, where, each year there's a handful of players you're going, man, they were great. It was really, I enjoyed watching them wear the red and black, and I can't wait to see who comes next. And you just listed a number of players that, one, left for the NFL and are going to be big-time contributors. But the names that you just listed to replace them, I think we're all excited to see what they can do. It's now their turn to pick up that mantle and carry that the name of Georgia Bulldogs and represent the school at a very high level. And I think they're very capable of doing it. It's just a matter of how quickly can they pick up the program.
Cody brings up Malachi Starks, but I want to talk about player representation as a whole because Georgia's bringing Carson Beck, Malachi Starks, and Michael Williams. But Brandon Adams brought up a good point last week in one of his shows that typically that's not the format. You've got the quarterback, you've got the leader of the defense, but you usually also have an offensive lineman. You yourself once representing Georgia. We thought it might be Tate Ratledge, but instead Kirby Smart brings Michael Williams instead. What do you make of the choice of Michael?
Well, I think he breaks the mold for most defensive linemen who are probably great players, but not always the brightest. I say that in jest a little bit. You know, as an offensive lineman myself at heart, you know, some of those guys, they just don't have the mental acumen to be able to play on the offensive line, so they're relegated to the defense. These are about the only shots that I have left. I certainly couldn't and wouldn't want to.
Richard Seymour's going to come knocking at your door any moment.
Oh, no. No, please don't. Please don't. Haven't seen Richard. A couple months ago, we were at an Atlanta Vibe game together, and I thought, man, what a nightmare. He could still, I'm telling you, he's still got 30 reps left in him per game. He can be a rotational. He
shook my hand, and I was like, ugh.
Yeah, there's a reason why he is in multiple Hall of Fames. The guy is special. So I say that in jest. But I think to your original question, I think it's a commendation of Michael and who he is as a leader and what he means to this team. I don't think it's any slight to the offensive lineman, Tate included. But sometimes you like to mix it up a little bit and have different representation. But I think offensive line is usually a good source for some sound logic and a good representation of your team. But I think Markel's going to do a great job.
Well, you talked about Kirby Smart earlier in this, and he doesn't shy away from anything, right? He's not going to bristle at any questions. Well, one of the questions, unfortunately, he's going to get is about the news last week where you get another racing arrest from this Georgia team. How big of an issue do you feel like this is on the Georgia team? As we've seen these kind of stack up now, and how does Kirby go about curbing this?
Yeah, I mean, that was good. Well, good play on words there. You know what? It is an issue, and I think Georgia is aware of it, and it continues to be preached to the team. But it's like looking for red cars. If you go out on the roads and you look for red cars, you're going to find them. And I think right now we're in a little bit of a spate of, for Georgia, there's this recurring theme that we are aware of. And so when situations arise, it just falls in the, here we go again category. I know firsthand that Georgia is taking an active role in trying to address and curb, using your words there, some of this behavior that's problematic. And with that said, Georgia's not alone in dealing with issues. I think as you look at the benefits of NIL deals and exposure and ability to stay in touch with the lives of these young players and student athletes across all teams, we have more access than we've ever had as a fan base, as just a community outside of football, that we have access into their lives. I also think this, for these players, they have more access to faster cars and more opportunities to enjoy what comes with making the money that they do, but they're also possibly not as mature as what you'd normally find. For years past, you don't see that kind of money until you're much older, and now you're talking about opportunities that are extended into high school now. So with that comes some problems, and you're trying to do your best to keep them safe and help them make good choices. But at the end of the day, you can only do so much. I can't spoon feed. You can't restrict. I wouldn't expect, nor would I appreciate if I were a player, the coaching staff or the entire athletic department to, are you going to take their keys away? Are you going to say they only can ride buses? You're going to say there's only so much that you can do from the outside. There's some personal accountability that needs to take place, and also some recognition from a bigger picture that some of these problems we've helped create just because of the culture and the opportunities that have been extended that aren't created just from the University of Georgia. They are much broader and have a bigger impact on student athletes across all campuses.
Hey, Jon, can you blink twice if you ever got into a driving incident in your time in Athens?
I can blink twice, all right. I'll tell you this. I'm also grateful. I can specifically think of a situation where it didn't make the news circuits, and if it did, it wouldn't have been a good thing. And it wasn't something too terrible, but now you live under such a fine microscope that we are aware of literally every occurrence that happens. And sometimes a warning is exactly what you need, is like a little, hey, you need to stay in the lane that you're supposed to be in. And it's like lesson learned. I can change behaviors that way. And it doesn't always have to be something that's made into a much bigger deal. So yeah, there was a couple lessons learned. David Green, if you're listening, I'm sure you're aware of that very incident that I'm referring to. But now I've stirred up more harness. Listen, that's a lot of water under those bridges, but grateful to have learned without having to come at a significant cost for anyone.
Jon's just signed himself up for the next DawgNation tell-all.
For sure.
Kaylee's going to get that story out of you at some point, but we appreciate it. And you talk about making mistakes, and one of the things I just think back to Jonathan Ledbetter for Georgia, and he got arrested at one point. And Kirby Smart, very early on in his tenure, made it a point to say, guys, I want you to ask, how's Jonathan doing, right? Like, he cares about these guys on a personal level. He wants to teach them. He doesn't want to say, all right, you screwed up, you're off the team, we'll see you later. I think he is invested. He knows all these families, right? He's invested in these players, and by having a chance to help these guys get on the right track. And you look at Jonathan Ledbetter now, by the end of his Georgia career, was a model citizen and, doing great things. And so I think it's definitely a learning opportunity, like you said. I think back to the days when I was in school and mopeds were the issue. Oh, for the moped days, right? Just to go back to that. But, Jon, yeah, we appreciate – it's definitely going to be one of those questions that comes up for Kirby Smart coming up tomorrow.
Yeah, and I think he understands that. I think everyone understands that. But I think as fans, as a community around a team and school, what we need to understand is that there are varying degrees. Are we talking about an incident? Are we talking about habits? Are we talking about someone that made a mistake and they can learn from it? Because that's really, I think that's what college, one of their defining characteristics thereof is that you're talking about young people, first time outside of mom and dad's home, that are going to make a few mistakes. And can we help them along the way? I think that period of time in a person's life is very influential as to who they are becoming. This isn't a refined product for any of them, and mistakes are going to be made. And it just so happens for Georgia that a similar, and not all of these mistakes are the same. When you're talking about road issues, they're not all the same. I think it's just inflamed, obviously, because of what happened a year ago. And we're more sensitive to it. You know what the stakes can be when you talk about bad decisions on the road, not only affecting those in-house, but those that are on the road as well. So I think a perspective is always huge, and understanding that not all mistakes are the same, and understanding also that these are young people that are still learning how to make good choices, and they're not always going to make the right choice, and that's part of the process.
Well, Jon, we're certainly thankful for your unique perspective as a former player, your insight, and maybe even narking on a former teammate of yours. Always appreciative of your time, Jon.
Well, I'll call him as soon as we hop off to give him a heads up. But no, it's all good. Tell
him if he wants to come on and defend himself, he's more than welcome to.
I will. I'll let him know.
Thanks, Jon.
I appreciate it. Go Dogs. Enjoy your time out in Texas.
Go Dogs. Yeah.
All right, now it is time for the SEC through portion. This is the one that we've been waiting for. We finally get to talk a little bit of football about where the coaches are going. But first, we got to give a shout-out to Royal Caribbean, of course.
Yeah, Royal Caribbean, Utopia of the Seas, debuting this weekend. That's why Kaylee and I are here and not Brandon, as we saw him right at the top of today's show. If you missed it, you can go back and watch it later. Brandon was in full vacation mode. He had probably a 2 or 3 day beard going. He had the Hawaiian shirt, so he gets a chance to, because we got to face it, our boy's an influencer.
Yeah.
Brandon Adams knows Royal Caribbean inside and out, and so for that reason, Royal Caribbean has tapped him to go be one of the first to be on Utopia of the Seas. So he's getting a chance to check that out right now, and of course it's the newest Oasis class ship from Royal Caribbean right there at Port Canaveral, which makes it easy. I know Brandon's a guy who would prefer to drive everywhere, right?
I mean, he is a creature of habit, so it makes sense that he'd take one that docks out of Port Canaveral.
And of course, Utopia of the Seas, the ship that the DawgNation cruise will be on next April. If you go to DawgNation.com/cruise, you can find out all the, or DawgNationCruise.com, that's actually the website we have now. You can find out more information about that. But yes, Utopia of the Seas, the newest ship from Royal Caribbean, debuting now. And keep an eye on Brandon's social media channels, and we'll have probably more video from this incredible ship later in the week from Brandon, and we'll get to find out his experiences on board. He'll probably test out all the new restaurants on board. He'll test out, I want to see him go down the abyss, the big slide on the back, the dry slide, so he doesn't have to be in a bathing suit. He can go down. It's the highest abyss they've done on any of these Royal Caribbean ships, so can't wait to see him there, and maybe on the Flow Rider, right?
Yeah, and even if you can't be with us on the DawgNation cruise, you can still contact Jessica Slater, the best travel agent on this side of the Mississippi, or I guess you could say on the east side of Dallas, right?
The other side of the Mississippi, both sides.
And you can contact her at jslater@dreamvacations.com. That is jslater@dreamvacations.com. We're going to do a quick SEC through, and then we're going to end with Around the Doghouse so we can make sure that we're talking dogs at the end, right, Cody?
Yes.
All right. Brian Kelly's going to be the first coach to take the stand. I think it makes total sense that Brian Kelly goes first. Again, we said it earlier. He is a veteran in the system now, even though he's been with LSU for a short amount of time. He's a guy that he knows what he's getting into when he goes into this. They're going to be absolutely drilled on how the defense is going to be fixed this year.
Yeah, Harold Perkins, another one of those players who's going to come. Was expecting him to step up for LSU this year. And then, of course, they lost the Heisman winning quarterback in Jaden Daniels. How do they replace him? They replace him with Garrett Nussmeier, who Georgia fans remember well, as Brandon said off the top of the show, from that SEC championship game when he came in relief of Jaden Daniels and threw the heck out of the football. So we'll get to hear from Garrett Nussmeier a little bit later today. That's LSU taking the podium. Brian Kelly goes to the main media podium in just about 15, 17 minutes.
And I feel like LSU is a team that is 1 year away from being a playoff contender. 2 years ago, LSU would have been in conversation, but now instead it's potentially Missouri, potentially Ole Miss, Texas maybe. So I do think they're going to ask Kelly, how do you bridge that gap and how do you enter the conversation of getting into that 12-team playoff?
Yeah, 10-3 a year ago, and we'll see what they can do this year. And like you said, be into 12-team playoff now. It's not SEC champ or bust. You just got to be up there in that top tier.
All right, and the next coach to take the stand will be South Carolina's very own Shane Beamer. Now, of course, their offensive line allowed the highest pressure rate of any Power 5 unit last year. You lose out on Spencer Rattler. I think the conversation today is how do you get your O-line to protect a new quarterback? That way you can still stay competitive in the SEC.
Yeah, 5-7 a year ago, and they bring the new quarterback, Luke Doty, here. So, not only are you getting to start for the first time in the SEC, all of a sudden you got to face this. You got to play defense against all these reporters out here, so going to be interesting to see what South Carolina brings. Yeah, Shane Beamer, no longer in the East, so it's going to be a kind of a different.
And they're not, like you said earlier, they're not playing Georgia this year, so the conversation around how UGA fans feel about Shane Beamer going to the podium, it changes.
Yeah, and we won't be listening as because. Let's face it, they're not going to play South Carolina in the SEC championship game where something crazy has happened. So, yeah, South Carolina not really on our radar for the first time in a long time.
Well, I mean, they haven't really been on the radar for the last few years, but they're especially not on our radar here anymore is what Cody's trying to say. All right, then it's going to be followed up by Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss. I think there's going to be a lot of questions surrounding the transfer portal. Lane Kiffin has found a way to put together a consistently good team with a ton of transfers, but also I think we're going to hear some conversations about somebody that transferred out of Ole Miss, and that, of course, being running back Quinshon Judkins. How do you bring in a guy to replace the numbers that he put up last year?
Yeah, he was automatic, especially against Georgia last year. Judkins, a lot of that will fall back onto Jackson Dart, who's coming back. I don't think probably getting enough praise as a returning starter in the SEC. We know what that Ole Miss offense can look fast, explosive at its best. So Jackson Dart coming back for another year. He'll be here at SEC Media Days today. We will get to hear from him. And yeah, is Ole Miss, I feel like when you get so many guys out of the transfer portal, it can work kind of on a razor's edge, right? It can also not work and not work really hard if guys, get disinterested, you lose a couple games. Will they be relevant when Georgia goes to Oxford late in the season? Can they follow up on the, being one of those teams? Last year, they're one of those teams who's in the playoff, as they make it to the Peach Bowl last year. So can they be that team again this year?
I think if I got one question for Lane Kiffin, it'd be his son Knox Kiffin versus Andrew Smart in an Oklahoma drill. Who's taking that W?
I would love to see that. And I don't know, does Kirby have a dog, and maybe versus Lane's dog too? I know Lane's dog has got
Juice, right?
Juice got plenty of love.
Got plenty of juice, you'd say?
Last year. So I'm sure he'll get some questions about that. And as Brandon said off the top of the show, he will, of course, be talking about his dad, Monty Kiffin, who, innovator on the college and NFL level. So I'm sure he'll have some heartfelt things to say about him as he takes to the big podium. That's not until this afternoon, 1:50 here, local time, 2:50 out on the East Coast.
And, of course, the day is going to end with Vanderbilt and Clark Lea. I'm curious to see how the questions are going to be approached for Vanderbilt in particular. They've always kind of been at the bottom of the SEC East, the bottom of the SEC as a whole. Now you bring in two competitors that aren't mediocre. They're already in the conversation to be more winning programs in the SEC. So just how does the mindset around Vanderbilt change? I'm curious to see how that podium's going to go.
Did not win an SEC game a year ago. Can they win an SEC game this year? The thing that worries me about with Vanderbilt is they, Clark Lea's not going to the podium today until about 4:30 Eastern time. How many of these folks are going to have packed it in by then? It'll be interesting to see the crowd for Clark Lea on the big stage as opposed to maybe, Lane Kiffin. Everybody who's anybody that's around us right now is going to move in there to hear what Lane Kiffin has to say. I'm not sure what Clark Lea. And that's the thing, is you got to create something. I mean, if he's him, that's kind of what Eli Drinkwitz has done really well in Missouri is make some news here today. Like, say something interesting because otherwise...
You've got nothing to lose.
Yeah, your program needs people to be talking about it. So we'll see what Clark Lea does up there. I don't think that's really in his personality that much, but we'll see what he can do.
And we'll make that cruising around the SEC courtesy of Royal Caribbean. And now we're going to end with a Round the Doghouse poured to you today by our friends at Dr. Pepper. I have always wanted to say that.
And now we can do it with Dr. Pepper.
Yeah, we're gonna do a live Dr. Pepper creamy coconut taste test here in just a minute. But let's talk the dogs first. Glenn Schumann has done it again. He picks up 4-star safety Rashad Johnson, making it the third DB of this 2025 class and the 20th commitment total. I remember at the beginning of the summer where we were sitting around wondering, when is Jefferson Tells Before the Hedges breakdown going to fill up? Because it was looking a little bit lackluster, but wow, this has been a summer, not just for the dogs, but specifically Glenn Schumann. Yeah, get Rashad Johnson out of Bushnell, Florida. Now, Georgia did miss out on another receiver over the weekend, but yeah, you got Johnson taking a look at his commitment right there. Georgia's going to have to keep building because we know Malachi Starks, who will be here this week, he's not going to be there next year. So you got KJ Bolden, who will kind of step in, but who are some of those other safeties that are going to have to be there? And one thing Georgia has a track record of doing, whether it's T-Rob, whether it's, Will Muschamp, we know Kirby Smart loves his DBs. You're going to get developed at Georgia, and I think that's something all these guys understand. And it's another spot where people will be in and out, right? Like you're going to play. We'll see KJ Bolden on the field at some point. Probably for sure on special teams, but he may get some other reps out there in Georgia's secondary this year as well, because it's not like a position like quarterback where, you're not going to play. He's going to come in and contribute. I mean, the depth here is just undeniable. I think you brought up a good point earlier that Malachi Starks is here, but all of his friends are gone. He's going to have to be the leader of a younger group, but adding a guy like Rashad Johnson just shows the talent, especially at the DB level, that Georgia's able to consistently bring in, and that's why they have one of the best secondaries in the entire country. The other big news we had. Let's do it. Charlie Condon goes third overall. I was on the plane from Atlanta to Dallas yesterday watching the MLB draft, and I was, of course, I didn't have the plug-in headphones that we had to have to watch it on Delta, right? So I'm watching it, and I'm kind of reading the commissioner's lips, and the first couple of picks does not go. And that was a little bit of a surprise. I think some of those, MLB mock drafts had him going third overall to the Rockies. But, yeah, still the highest rated or highest taken Georgia Bulldog ever in the Major League Baseball draft. 5 was the previous mark, so he is a
beyond that, no doubt he's the greatest Georgia baseball player that has been. He wins the Dick Howser, wins the Golden Spikes Trophy, leads the nation not only in home runs but also batting average this year. And now he gets a chance to go to Coors Field in that thin air up in Denver when he gets there, and he can go hit more bombs out there. You know, they get so many home runs out there in Colorado already, so what a perfect fit for Charlie once he gets to the big league level to be hitting out there at Coors Field.
Yeah, I know there was a lot of talk that he could potentially be the first pick of the first round, but then in looking at it, now that the MLB is in this lottery system for a draft, it's not always the best player available that goes number one. Sometimes teams have needs, so I saw that in the number 3 spot, and I was like, wait a second, but then when I looked deeper into it, obviously going number 3 is a huge honor, and it certainly is not going to take away from what Charlie Condon accomplished with the Bulldogs, and I'm glad that we're having this conversation. I'm excited to see him in that Rockies uniform.
Yeah, the MLB draft is so weird because you have bonuses and slots and, you know, signability a lot of times for teams. Will they draft a guy out of high school if they think he's going to college, or they know they can get a guy who's going to leave college? And, you know, so there's all these extra variables around the MLB draft, which will continue today. And it's here in, you know, the Dallas area in Arlington as we got the MLB All-Star game.
Yeah.
A home run derby going to go on not too far away from us here at the Texas Rangers Park tonight. We'll see Marcell Ozuna and what he can do for the Braves. But yeah, so congratulations to Charlie. Damn good dog for sure. And, you know, he's one of those guys, every time we talk to him, you couldn't like him more. The walk-on to the number 3 overall pick in the Major League Baseball
And
draft.
we just got confirmation that Greg Sankey announced that SEC Media Days will be back in Atlanta next year. So back in the home state of Georgia, no longer going to be in Texas. Glad that we're here, and one of the main reasons I'm glad that we're here is that this event is sponsored by none other than Dr. Pepper. Of course, we're excited to hear Kirby Smart speak, but once I heard that the event was sponsored by Dr. Pepper, I think the hairs on me stood up a little bit because, like Brandon Adams, Dr. Pepper is probably my main source of caffeine and energy.
So Dr. Pepper, I'm normally a Dr. Pepper Zero Sugar. I've been sipping on this the entire show. But we got here today, and all summer long, we've heard Brandon Adams hyping up Dr. Pepper Creamy Coconut. And I said, hadn't tried it yet. So we go to the cooler here at SEC Media Days. And what do they have? The Dr. Pepper Creamy Coconut special for this summer. So I figured, limited edition, it says across the top. We have got to do a taste test. Kaylee, let's pop our tops on our Dr. Pepper Creamy Coconut.
I'm going to have you open yours, and then I'm going to need you to help me because I have fingernails
I don't
on.
have nails.
I can't do it. So Cody's going to have to help
I've
me
popped
with
a top
this.
or 2 in my time. There you go.
Perfect.
All right.
We've been waiting on this all morning.
So, Dr. Pepper Creamy Coconut. We appreciate Dr. Pepper being the sponsor of DawgNation Daily. And let us try.
Is this the first live taste test?
I don't know if this is good TV or not. Woo! It tastes a little bit like summer. Doesn't
I like it?
I do too.
I like it. It kind of tastes like, you know, when the slushy truck came around when you were a kid and the slushy melted at the end and then you got to sip it. That's what that tastes like.
You got a little tiger's blood on the top?
Yeah.
Yes.
That's exactly what it is.
Exactly.
You
yeah.
know, I'm usually a Dr. Pepper classic. Flavors aren't really my thing, but I give that the Kaylee star of approval.
They do have the strawberries and cream here, which is another
We'll
one
just do a live taste
that I don't get to the SEC Media Days. That's when I finally get to try all these other flavors, because if I'm doing it, I'm going to do Dr. Pepper, Diet Dr. Pepper Zero Sugar. So I love trying the different stuff, and I am a fan now of creamy coconut. So thank you, Dr. Pepper.
This will not be the last one I have this week, but we will make that Around the Doghouse poured to you today by our friends at Dr. Pepper, who will be with us all week long here at SEC Media Days. And now we're going to give a shout out to our friends at Mr. Rooter.
Yeah, Mr. Rooter got home water filtration, drain cleaning, repair, water heaters, and much more. It's that time. It's the thing that you dread the most in your house when something goes wrong. Well, have Mr. Rooter come and take care of things as quickly as possible. Water can get out of hand real fast. They're dedicated to addressing your plumbing needs as quickly as possible, which is key. They know that both residential, commercial clients need to have working plumbing all day, every day. Cannot not have the toilet flush. So rest assured you can count on Mr. Rooter for upfront pricing, flexible service options, and exceptional customer service. $29 service fee will get waived on any repair when you visit MrRooterGeorgia.com to find your local Mr. Rooter. Yeah, don't deal with any of those problems longer than you have to. Call Mr. Rooter. Get that taken care of. They are proud sponsors of DawgNation Daily.
All right, no no golden shoe today. Maybe we can do a little something different. We do have, so Brandon has Eddie on his desk. We brought our own mascot this week for table decorations. Right now we're calling him DawgNation Duck. I actually found him on the DawgNation cruise. If you guys have a better name for him, we will take all suggestions. But he is going to be our mascot for this week, so that way Eddie has his rightful place on the throne in the office. Speaking of Eddie, we are going to do a Gator Hater countdown, of course, with today being 1,346 days since the Gators have beaten the Dogs. It's going to be hard to control my facial expressions when I see Florida roll in here. Try not to let the eyes roll out of the head.
Yeah, Billy Napier will be here. You know what? We see a lot of schools getting represented.
I don't
here.
see Florida.
Not as many, not a ton of Florida folks. So we'll see if they roll in for Florida Day, which is, of course, later on this week. But yeah, everybody else is here, but we don't see those lousy, stinking Gators. All right, that is DawgNation Daily, today presented by Pella Windows and Doors of Georgia. Let's do a little cool down.
RS Andrews, the one you turn to for your air conditioning, heating, plumbing, and electric needs. They show up on time, do the work that's promised for the price that's promised, and you can trust them on all of that.
All right, so we'll dive into the comments, see what everybody's talking about here on DawgNation.com. All right, Randy Hall says, where's our coconut heads? We have the crazy guy in the
I left
commercial.
mine in the hotel room.
We need Dr. Pepper, send us, we'll wear them. We've done dumber things.
Senior Dog 54 says that Vandy needs to move to the ACC. I actually think that would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, but try convincing Vanderbilt to not take SEC money. That's the thing. Is that it's probably a better fit, yes.
The Harvard of the SEC.
But they getting that SEC payout. What does the red rubber duck represent? Randy Hall asking again.
I actually found that on the DawgNation cruise. I think there were some DawgNation cruisers that set up ducks all around the ship, and I found this one sitting on top of the trash can, and I came with a little note, and I've held on to it all this time. I've been keeping it in my book bag, saving him for something special. I wanted to bring Eddie with me to SEC Media Days, but I didn't know if Brandon Adams was going to be okay with that, so instead I brought our own mascot that we could have here on site. It kept squeaking in my book bag on the plane. I think the lady next to me was a little bit confused, but now DawgNation Duck, or for now, he's DawgNation Duck. He's going to be with us here all week.
Yeah, we need to get one of a name for Rubber Doggy. I like that, Randy Hall. Let's see what everybody else is talking about on.
We have been trained
Facebook.
Well. We know.
Yes.
We know to circle around.
Yes, we've watched Brandon do this plenty of times to know that we've got to get on all the and of course the internet here. We've got 100 people doing their own podcast. A little bit slow here in Dallas, but we'll get it figured out.
Everything is bigger, but the Wi-Fi is not better.
Yes, that is true. And, Brandon talked about, he wanted to know from you on Friday on the show, what is it going to be like? What does it feel like? Does it feel like they're really embracing? And I don't know that Atlanta, when you get off the plane, it says SEC Media Days at, Hartsfield-Jackson. But it's, we got to the hotel, it definitely feels. And coming onto the hotel, down the street, there were banners out that says it's SEC Media Days. The other thing to keep in mind is it's MLB All-Star Game is also in town, so it's kind of a weird, dual thing. And, because the Dallas-Fort Worth area is so big in Arlington that you can kind of have all those things going on and not see each other. So I don't know, it's taken over the town, but they've done it right. We're at a big hotel, the Omni Hotel here, and it just, it feels like SEC Media Days like it has at the Winfrey, which is, this is very spacious. The Winfrey sometimes can feel pretty tight, which is kind of fun. But
it's no College Football Hall of Fame, though. Let's just go ahead and state that for the record.
The one thing about the College Football Hall of Fame is you got kind of split up a little bit. We are right across from the main media room, and we see everybody coming out as Greg Sankey has just wrapped up. We'll get, like we said, Brian Kelly being there in just a little bit. But yeah, it's all together here, which is kind of a cool thing.
So
Haley's killing the show, says Steve in England. We appreciate Steven on Facebook.
I hope that means killing in the good way and not in the bad way. But I think by the looks of it, with everybody rushing out, it seems like Greg Sankey's time at the podium might be over, which means Brian Kelly's now on the clock.
Yeah, he'll be up there talking very soon, and it'll be interesting. I'm sure, you've got, Mike Griffith is heading this way. Connor Riley will be here this week. We got Jack Leo doing some stuff for us. So all that stuff on DawgNation.com. Any of the things you want to see, check on the YouTube channel. You can check, on DawgNation.com and see what's going on. and the latest for all of that stuff. I'm trying to get this to load, and it just will not.
Yeah,
load.
we're trying to take some comments, but again, just a lot of people on this Wi-Fi stream. So hopefully we'll have that figured out by tomorrow. Speaking of tomorrow, thankful to have Jon Stinchcomb on the show today, but we will have Mike Griffith, Connor Riley making appearances in the next few days. Mike getting here today, Connor getting here later today. So we'll have more of your Dog Nation favorites, as well as some special guests we're going to have on the show. It looks like we finally get the comments.
Yeah, rubber ducks are a Jeep and Carnival thing. I guess now it's everywhere, says Christy. Thanks, Christy. Mark said he was just about to say that. An old troll on the windshield, says Scott, out on his 57 Harley. That sounds cool. He needs a little Georgia Bulldog shirt. So we appreciate that. But yeah, Georgia, of course, coming up here at SEC Media Days tomorrow. So by tomorrow's show, we will have heard from Kirby Smart and some of the players initially. A lot of times they'll talk to just the local UGA beat writers first before Kirby goes in the big room. So hopefully we'll have some, already some stuff that Kirby Smart has been saying that we'll be able to share with you on tomorrow's show at DawgNation Daily. And again, tomorrow we'll get kind of an update from Brandon from the ship, which is going to be very fun to see what he's up to on Utopia of the Sea. So yesterday he was just kind of in the parking lot last night when he filmed his piece right off the top of this show. But he will be on deck. I can't wait to see what it looks like.
Me too.
Because it should be beautiful as he is on board Utopia of the Seas tomorrow.
All right, we're going to try to take
Which receiver, Lance D asked out, did the Dogs miss out on? As Jeff Sintel kind of told us it was going to happen. Travis Smith Jr. out of Westlake, of course, commits to Tennessee over the weekend. So Georgia doesn't get C.J. Wiley, doesn't get Travis Smith Jr. So, this big, beautiful what could be of state of Georgia receivers on this team. Still got Thomas Blackshear out of the Savannah area, but it doesn't look like it's going to happen. And, Georgia's still signing their wide receiver. So, and, it's not done. Kirby Smart, as he has told us many times, will never stop recruiting. But, Georgia does miss out on Travis Smith Jr.
But it's time to stop thinking about the past and let's start focusing on the future. It's not over.
No, it's not. And Kirby, he's not shy about saying he is still recruiting all those folks. C.J. Wiley, from what we've heard, Jeff kind of has ears all over the place, and he hears what's going on. And he said C.J. Wiley does, as soon as C.J. committed, we kind of felt, this is K.J. Bolden. It'll just be, give him 2 months and he'll commit to Georgia. And he said not necessarily going to be the case there. But Terrence Edwards trains both Travis Smith Jr. and he trains both C.J. Wiley. So it'll be interesting to hear his point of view when we get to talk to him again about, I know he tells us he likes, because he, as he should, he wants those guys to make the best decision for themselves. But I know he's wearing Georgia gear. There's a great picture of Terrence with Travis Smith Jr. this weekend where Terrence has got the Georgia hat on, and he won't buy into any of that stuff. He's not going to put on another team's gear. He's also not going to threaten you. Did you see Jerry Rice threaten reporters because he thought they were throwing shade at the 49ers? He was at a golf tournament. It was in Kansas City, and so the local media there was like, hey, do you think the Chiefs can do it again? And he thought they were talking smack about the 49ers who lost to the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. So he's like, I'll beat you up. And apparently it was like a miscommunication, but Jerry Rice went off.
So what Cody's trying to say here is if you're upset about C.J. Wiley and Travis Smith Jr., don't go to the players, go to Terrence.
Yeah, we'll get to ask Terrence about it when he gets on DawgNation. Right. I'd swap Georgia Tech and Vandy. That's an interesting thought in the SEC. I don't know. I mean,
we're going to play them every year regardless.
And I think SEC would rather, as little impact as Vanderbilt has in Nashville, they're still in Nashville, and I think the SEC likes that. So I think Georgia Tech on the SEC would still have as little impact. And Georgia, as long as the SEC schedule doesn't get too crazy, we'll keep playing them. One thing that I keep thinking about is the Georgia Tech game this year is Black Friday. And will it be a blackout on Black Friday?
No, we're not going to troll ourselves. Don't expect a blackout. I'm not expecting the blackout.
Blackout on Black Friday. We just got, this is the time
at
events like this to start planting those seeds, and we will get, blackout on Black Friday from Kirby. Black uniforms, of course. I've seen some pictures. They are going to be in the new video game out there. And actually, I think, go to DawgNation.com. I think soon Jeff Sintel may have a little more info on the SEC college football video game and what might be in that for Georgia Bulldog fans. So keep an eye on DawgNation.com later today. All right, trying to get these comments to go, but Brandon makes it look so easy, doesn't he?
I know, right? He's got those Twitter fingers scrolling. I can't do that. We're going to try to take a few more comments, but if we can't, we do want to make sure that we thank you guys for watching today. We know it's not Brandon Adams and DawgNation Daily, but we've been excited to bring you this coverage, and hopefully we can make you proud and deliver the coverage that you deserve and give you some good insight on the tea and gossip that is going down here at SEC Media Days in Dallas, Texas.
Yeah, we'll be off. We'll talk to some special guests. We'll maybe have some of that stuff for you later in the week. We'll also, be popping in, and we'll be hearing all these press conferences. Stuff said is really good. We will be sharing that with you on DawgNation Daily. We will be your source for SEC Media Days. So stick with us all week long as we are live in Dallas, Texas. All right, that's going to do it for DawgNation Daily today. Kaylee, Mansell, thanks for having me be a part of it. It was good to hear from Jon Stinchcomb, like you said. Good to hear from Brandon Adams. Hopefully he has a great time on Utopia of the Seas. We will hear from him later in the week. But that's going to do it for DawgNation Daily, presented today by Pella Window and Door of Georgia. Thanks so much. We will see you right back here tomorrow, 10 a.m., live from Dallas.